Jay, welcome back to the Way of Champions podcast, my friend. It's so great to see your face and have you back on.
Thank you very much, John. I'm looking forward to this as always. I walk 3 miles a day now because I can't run any longer, and I listen every Friday. I listen to the Way of Champion podcast to see what's new and what's out there. So I enjoy, and I hope I can offer something.
Well, I know you definitely can, and I've appreciated your support over the years at different talks I've done and republishing articles and sharing my books and stuff like that. So it's great. You've got, a brand new book here, Lessons from the Best Coach, Develop a Winning Team Culture That Lasts, which is it's a great book, super actionable, uh, great ideas. And one of the things I love right out of the gate, you say, only players make players better. So here you are, coach with 750 wins and decades of coaching and national championships. And, you know, it's about the players, not about me.
It's about the players, John, and it took me a while to figure that out. I like to tell people in 1996, we had made the NCAA tournament 18 straight years, which at that time was a record in the country. And in 1996, we were 12, 3, and 4 and did not make the tournament because our schedule was awful. And I was obsessed with the outcome. I was obsessed with winning, and I stupidly thought that if I didn't at some point win a national championship, I'd never be accepted as a good coach. But that really opened my eyes, and I got my captains together outside of our facility, and I said, guys, from this point on, we're going to focus on the process, and we're going to forget the outcome, focus on the process, and I'm going to give you guys responsibilities and have you guys work it on your own and see what we can do going forward and so on. And we won the damn national championship 2 years later.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but since that time, it opened my eyes, and I really began to think about the phrase you just said, that in the long run, coaches do not develop players. Only players can develop players.
Mhm.
And maybe you recall in the book, I asked the question, so what do coaches do? In my mind, coaches create an environment in which the players can get better.
Mhm.
Hopefully, that's the coaching, and want to get better. That's the motivation the players bring to us.
Mhm.
And so we try to make the environment at Ohio Wesleyan motivating, challenging, and fun. I'm
Mhm.
a firm believer that fun is really, really important. You know, if you watched England yesterday and the Euro, you could see that they were not having fun out
They're
there, and
not
their
having
play,
fun.
no, and their play showed that. So I think we do a lot of things to have fun, and if you want, we can talk about that going forward.
Well, I think it's a great place to start. For a number of reasons. Now, I get all the time, these parents who say to me, "Oh, well, we're not sports not supposed to be fun anymore. This is competitive." But that's such a mistake to take that approach that you can have one or the other. Actually, I think as athletes develop mastery and are really driven, competitiveness is fun. That's where the joy comes from. So fun isn't fooling around or not being serious or not working hard. Joy is, Steve Kerr was on here and he says, no one has more fun and plays with more joy than Steph Curry. But you wouldn't say that that guy's fooling around. I mean, that's as serious and as competitive as you get. And so, like at an Ohio Wesleyan, where you're Division III soccer, their players are not on a scholarship to pay for school. And so some of the Division III programs that I've worked with in leadership and team development, the coaches all understand there's nothing keeping the kids here unless they get joy and some sort of intrinsic value from this, right?
Correct. And I tell parents all the time when they say the same thing to me that they say to you, that your son or daughter went back to their second soccer practice because they had fun at the first.
Yeah.
And they keep going back now, 15 years later or whatever it is, because for some reason they have fun. Because soccer is really, John, if you think about it, the last player's game, isn't it? once that game starts, and I've done this in the past, I'll go up and sit with my wife in the bleachers because the players take over.
Hmm.
And fun is very, very important. And elite athletes, good athletes, you mentioned Steph Curry, competing for them is fun. That's why they do it. Ask any of the elite athletes in any sport, and they will say that they have fun. You know, Michael, Larry Bird, Magic, it doesn't matter. They loved to compete.
Yeah. Yeah. And it gives, and again, I say, sometimes in my talks, I'll say like, there's a difference between joy and pleasure, right? And so pleasure is eating that tub of Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Joy is pursuing these long-term goals. So I always say like, if you've ever run a marathon, and I've done one, like mile 20 to 26, there's no pleasure, right?
No.
But you can still experience the joy of running and still love running, right? So again, it's not that when there's joy, there's no hard work, there's no stress, there's all those things. It's just that's what brings you joy and says, man, that was hard. I can't wait to do that again tomorrow. And I think your point of the reason they came back for the second practice was because they loved the first. The reason they came back for the second year was because they loved the first. The reason they're still here is I got to make them love it. And I mean, and you got a big roster of players. So there's 20 of them that aren't seeing the field a lot. And so, like, how do I make it joyful and pleasurable, not pleasurable, but how do I bring joy to them? How do I make sure that they feel like they have a role, even if maybe the game time, playing time is not going to be the answer?
Good question. And I will say I ran Boston once too, and we'll never do it again. Believe me. But that applies, your analogy applies specifically to soccer because soccer is a game that you play when you're tired and you're sore and you cannot stop. If you
Hmm.
stop, you have to come out.
Hmm.
But what we do, John, we focus on practice. I believe strongly that practice is the most important thing that athletes do, and
Hmm.
therefore coaches do. I'm anal about practice and how we put the practices together. And what we do is every single practice, we compete in everything.
Hmm.
There's a red team and a gray team or whatever. And everything we do, we keep score even if it's a shooting activity, which of the teams scored the most goals
Hmm.
or whatever it is. At the end of the day, there's a winning team and a losing team. The winning team gets their picture taken and we put it on our social media. I don't put it on, but my
Hmm.
assistants do on the social media. And the losing team picks up the gear, does the laundry, sweeps the floor, whatever it is, and we do it again tomorrow. We want our guys looking forward every day to practice, all day long for
Hmm.
practice. And when they leave, we want a smile on their face. And that's how we create the joy. Is it 100% foolproof? You know it isn't.
Hmm.
Uh, and again, you mentioned parents early on. Sometimes parents get in the way of that a little bit.
Yeah.
But by and large, our guys love it. And
Hmm.
we do that all the time. And as I said, everything we do is we keep score. And I'm the referee, which always gives them a lot of laughs because I carry a yellow and red card in my pocket for every practice. So it's just a lot of fun. And
Hmm.
our practices are, I don't want to, first of all, they're no longer than 70 minutes. In my observation over the years, most coaches, I think, practice too long.
Yeah.
Our guys can't focus and concentrate beyond 70 minutes. And John, I
Hmm.
hate to tell you this, either can I.
Hmm.
And so we keep it to 70 minutes. And if you organize a practice successfully and you go from station to station to station or whatever it is, 70 minutes is enough.
Hmm.
Once we get into October when we're trying to kind of get ready for the tournament, it's might not even be 60 minutes.
Hmm.
People think, the longer the practice, the better. I don't think that at all,
Yeah.
at all. If you
Yeah.
organize it well, you can be short, sweet, to the point, and get better.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting a couple of years back when Pep Guardiola was um, coaching Bayern Munich. They were here in Oregon at for the MLS All-Star game, and they had an open training, and I went and watched training, and just the lack of downtime, right? How quickly they move from thing to thing, drinking water on the way, getting coaching, right? And so you've done a lot of coaching education and mentorship, and so have I. And one of the things when I'm doing coach mentoring is I'll bring a stopwatch, and in a 90-minute practice, I'll say, how much downtime, Jay, did you think you had there? When you were talking, when they were getting water, when the ball wasn't rolling, and most coaches will say, I don't know, 10 minutes, and it's usually about 30 to 40,
Yeah.
right? So you're
Yeah.
actually not practicing 90 minutes, right? So like
Right.
you said, 70 minutes of the ball moving quickly and really quick progressions from activity to activity is fun for the players, but also as a player, um, I know when like if I don't know when practice ends, I'm holding back a little bit, right? Like, I don't know, if
Absolutely.
coach is going 2.5 hours today, I got to have something left at the end. But if I always know 70 minutes, this is over, then I know that I am going all out, that there's 10 minutes left and it's not going to be 20, it's not going to be 30. And I've found personally, like, sometimes when that final scrimmage is 1-1 and they're playing for a winner and you just stop it, no, coach, come on, come on. Nope, we're done.
Yeah,
Come back
exactly.
tomorrow, bring the same energy, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think just two quick comments. I think most coaches talk too much at practice.
Hmm.
I was for years, I was the director of coaching for a large soccer club here in Central Ohio, and that was my number one criticism of the coaches
Hmm.
working with these young players. They talk too damn much.
Hmm.
And I think coaches like to hear themselves talk. I think they want to make sure that the players know what they're talking about and all those egotistical kinds of things. But secondly, and you brought up a great point, everything we do is timed.
Hmm.
So, for example, say, and I don't do this often, but for the point of the example, say we're going to play 6 against 4 going a goal.
Hmm.
I'll say to the guys, okay, we're going to do this for 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Ready, go. Boom.
Yeah.
If you don't stop it at 90 seconds, as
Yeah.
you just said, you're not going to get 100% effort.
Right.
If you stop it at 90, the guys work hard. And then I'll bring them in and say, okay, guys, how'd you do?
Yeah.
I could tell them, you could tell them, but I
Right.
want them to tell me how they did because
Yeah.
I want them to learn. Well, Jay, and they call me Jay, not coach. Well, Jay, we only scored 3 goals. And I go, wait a minute, 3 goals in 90 seconds isn't really bad. If we
Yeah.
could do during a game, we would be a basketball team.
Yeah.
And how can we get better, guys?
Hmm.
Defenders, how can we get better? You tell me. And then we go back another 90 seconds, go. And
Yeah.
so everything we do is timed for the very reason you just suggested.
Yeah.
Now the guys know when I say 90 seconds, it's going to be 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And so I don't have to talk to them about working hard because that's part of the gig. They work hard. 90
Right.
seconds, they have a 15-second blow, and we talk about what went right, what went wrong, and we go forward.
Yeah. Well, I would say one of the things that I changed in probably the last 8 or 9 years of my coaching was shorter duration, higher intensity games. So even if
Yes.
I set aside 30 minutes at the end of practice to play 9 aside, we would probably only we'd play 3 8-minute games or
Right.
something like that, right? And it's
Right.
like I want it intense. I want them have a chance to reflect. And I want to get better. Because if you play for 30, it just sort of ebbs and flows like a game sometimes does. But I think it's really important. Like, I mean, and I'll start with a team and we'll play 4 minutes. And they're like, coach, why are we only playing 4 minutes? Well, show me that you can play at super high intensity, high physicality, movement, actions, thought for 4 minutes, and I'll give you five.
Right.
But if you can't do it for four, why would I give you 20?
Right.
Right? So I
Exactly right.
want higher intensity, more reps. You can squeeze spaces, you can do whatever. But I like this is a big change in my coaching is I never just play a big long game at the end. Like some
Right.
practices you'll play, you'll do something, but I play shorter duration games and try to up the intensity of it. And then when you can do it, I'll give you an extra minute. And
Yeah.
maybe by the end of the season, we're playing 3 10-minute games, but starts at four.
Right. That's a good idea. That's a
Yeah.
real good idea.
Yeah. Um, how, I mean, 48th season coming up here. Um, and like, how have you stayed relevant, Jay? And maybe I'll ask this question first of all by saying, what hasn't changed about kids over 48 seasons? What's the same about what the kids coming to Ohio Wesleyan um, want out of the experience and how they play and what they want from their coach? And then let's
Well,
talk about what's changed because I think this
right.
is important. Yeah.
As you know, a lot has changed, but I think the common denominator right now is our guys love to play.
Yeah.
They love the game.
Yeah.
And I think that hasn't changed. How they go about it or the outside influences and so on, and the pressures and stress, and especially since COVID, there's been a lot of stress, that those types of things have changed. But the love of the game hasn't changed. And I don't want that to stop.
Mm.
And that's an underlying reason why we have fun, because I want the guys to have fun and continue to love the game. And when they leave, I want them to continue playing and coaching and so on. I mean, I have so many former coaches who are coaching in college, high school, club, whatever it is, and they've been able to bring that fun aspect that we have at Ohio Wesleyan into their programs.
Hmm. What makes it fun? You know, I got to work a lot here in Oregon for the last couple of years with a guy named Greg Ryan, who used to be a national team coach and
Yeah.
everything. And one of the things Greg said to me, because I used to invite him out and say, "Hey, can you just assess my practice?" Right. And
Right.
one of the things that Greg said, which is all stuck with me, he says, "Would I want to be a player in that practice?" Right? And it's like if I would want to be a player in that practice, the players probably want to be a player in that practice too. So
Right.
how do you create this environment, as you said, where people want to be a player in that practice? I mean, the competitiveness you talked about is probably part of it. What else? Just the games based stuff and
I think if I had to describe my program and my coaching in a few words, it would be I'm all about relationships and empowerment.
mhm,
So, for example, John, we're walking in after practice, and I might say to you, "Hey, John, you know that second activity that we did? Here's what we wanted to get out of it. How was it? Did we do what we're supposed to do?" And he might say the relationships and the trust is to the point now where he might look at me and say, "Jay, that was the worst thing we've ever done in training."
yeah,
And if that's the case, then I've got to change it. I either
yeah,
drop it or revise it in some way. But I've got to know that. And
yeah,
I think a lot of coaches should do that. I mean, I talk to the players every single day about the practice. And
hmm,
we have a leadership group. We talk every single Monday. And maybe we're in a mini slump. And I'll say, guys, tell me some things we can do that will help us get out of the slump. I,
hmm,
I I give them the power to to I want the team to be more than a team. I want it to be a program.
hmm,
I want them to have the power to make suggestions and know that I'm going to listen to them, and in many times I'm going to change to what they want to do. And I think I really believe that's important. And so in my example, so I either eliminate that activity or I change it
hmm.
because we don't have enough time in practice to do stupid things. And I think if other coaches would talk to their players and ask their players, I think that would help create that type of environment. And
Well, yeah, go
the
ahead.
players
Sorry.
today, John, are pretty smart, as you know. I
Yeah.
mean, so, but anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just I love that we don't have enough time in practice to do stupid things. I was just writing that down. But you know what's interesting is, I mean, all the coaches we've had on here, NBA coaches, World Cup winners, lacrosse champions, national champions in every sport, right? You know, they all say it's about the relationships.
Right.
Um, did you 48 seasons, 47 seasons ago. Did you know that? Did you understand that? Or did you think it was about the X's and O's?
That's a
Is that
really
something
good.
that came intuitively to you or?
I was, I was lucky. My two mentors, as far as coaches are concerned, would be my father and my high school basketball coach.
Mhm.
And my father, I'm the oldest of 10 kids, Boston Irish Catholic, you know how that goes.
Mhm.
My father didn't know much about sports. He knew nothing about them.
Mhm.
And he was my coach for most of my sports early on.
Mhm.
And what I learned from him is he didn't know anything about soccer or lacrosse or basketball.
Mhm.
But what he did do is he created relationships with the kids so that they would come back for practice,
Mhm.
looking forward to practice every single day.
Mhm.
And so I said, wow, that is really, really powerful
Mhm.
because, I mean, he had asked me and some of the other players, well, what can we do in practice today? Those types of things. My high school basketball coach was a really good player. He short time, he went to Springfield College. That's why I went to Springfield College because of him. He was really good, played pros in with the Celtics, as a matter of fact, for a short period of time. And he in the 60s, he would empower us and our relationship with him was really, really powerful. I
Mhm.
felt I could tell him anything and he
Mhm.
would accept it. He wouldn't always take my suggestion, but he did at times, but I knew he always listened to me. So
Mhm.
that made me, and I hate this phrase, but that made me want to play for him. I hate it when players say that about me. I hope they never play for me,
Yeah, play
but
for themselves. Yeah.
that made it
Yeah.
important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that phrase because I think it's the lack of relationship, the lack of human caring and understanding. It's not that they want to play for you, it just makes them want to play. And with the lack of it, then they just don't want to play. Well,
Right.
why would I be here? And that's certainly something that over the years, right? Well, there's so many other things I could do. So, if you're not a coach creating that relationship, making me feel loved, and again, it doesn't mean that I'm not pushing you, I'm not being demanding, I'm not, and it also doesn't mean that I'm not making mistakes, but I'm fixing those mistakes and moving on. And I think I mean, my biggest problem with coach education across all sports, because I mean, I just spoke to 400 ice hockey coaches. And right before that, I spoke to 150 mountain biking coaches, is understanding that coaching is a relationship business. It's
Yeah.
not an X's and O's business.
Yeah.
And people always ask me, what's my one quote about coaching? It would be, no one cares how much you know till they know how much you care. Right.
Correct. Yeah.
But I feel like that's the first thing we should teach. And I feel like it's often not. We just leave it to coaches to figure that out themselves. Or the 25-year-old coach wants, give me the drills. It's just the drills, and that's not the
Yes.
secret sauce.
No, John, I mean, you can go online right now and you can plug in attacking corner kicks, and in 8 seconds, you get a million hits. I mean,
Yeah.
who cares about that stuff? I
Yeah.
don't think I'm a great tactical coach, and I've had a semi relationship with Krzyzewski. He doesn't think he's a great tactical coach either.
Yeah.
But and I agree about coach education. And look, I'm, as you know, a longtime NSCAA guy,
Mhm.
United Soccer Coaches guy, and I'm very critical of my peers in that group because I don't think in our coaching academy programs we spend enough time with this kind of stuff, with the culture stuff.
Yeah.
It's all X's and O's, and I think to some point that's fine, I guess, but that's to me that's not coaching.
Yeah, 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 exactly. That's training. That makes you,
Right,
that's teaching skills, which again, it's important. I will say it's not that it's not important. It's incredibly important because the more of that you have, the more creative you have, the more you can say, you know what, this activity is not working. Let's move on.
right,
So it's not to say that, but I feel like we do a lot of that still because it's easier to measure. I can test Jay on, well, could he teach the center back how
right,
to, play zonally or whatever, right? Versus how, create culture, right?
right.
Establish relationships because that stuff's hard to see and it takes a lot of time and whatever. But that's the key to coaching. And I've never met a successful coach who doesn't agree with that. And I feel
Yes,
like even if we can't test it, we have to do a better job of getting that across to young coaches.
right. I mean, I think as I said, I listen to your pods all the time, and And I've heard Steve Kerr and Pete Carroll and coaches like this who they talk about culture and how important culture is. And look at uh, it, and those guys are pretty successful. And if they understand that and they're sharing it with us, other coaches, then we should listen, I
Hmm.
think, because they're good at what they do.
Yeah. 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 And it's hard. I mean, they all share because they know it's hard, right? Because culture is
Right.
not a one-time thing, it's an all-time thing. It's like if you're
Correct.
willing to do this every day, build relationships, have meetings, have standards, and do this, then good for you. Like because there's no shortcut to it, right?
No.
There's no secret sauce to be like, all right, we just took the culture pill and now that's done. So they
Correct.
all share it because they know how hard it is to do, and there's no way around it. Before we get into that, because I want to explore culture and your definition of it, we talked about what hasn't changed. So what has changed over the decades about the kids that you're coaching?
I think their experiences have changed.
Mhm.
Maybe not always better experiences, but certainly they're playing soccer longer. They're
Mm,
playing all year round. They're selecting one sport, which I disagree with. Where when I first came here, I had guys who were playing soccer and lacrosse, soccer, track and field, soccer and basketball. That doesn't happen anymore, John.
mhm,
And I think it's all this obsession with, okay, we got to get a soccer scholarship, so we've got to play soccer 24/7 the
mhm,
entire year, and so on and so forth. So I've seen that. I think the second thing that's changed, and I think this is a killer, is the stress that some of these guys have.
mm,
Not only since COVID, but even before COVID. And I look at their club coaches, high school coaches, parents, they many times these people put enormous amount of pressure on these players
mhm,
before they even get to college.
mhm,
And the burnout ratio, I don't keep stats about this, but I can tell you anecdotally that we've had more kids burning out, quitting the team, unfortunately, in the last few years
mhm.
than maybe my first 10 years or 12 years or 15 years total. And
Wow.
it's just that they're overwhelmed with this kind of stuff. And I think one of the comments that I get all the time from my players is, why don't you yell at me? Well, John, we don't yell at our players. I don't yell at referees. I mean,
Mhm,
that's ridiculous. But that's the kind of culture they're coming from many times, not 100%, but many times. And I think that just adds to stress. And I don't think it makes games fun when you have
mhm.
a player yelling, a coach yelling and screaming at the player for the whole 90 minutes. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. So I've seen an increase in stress, burnout, and I think it's really too bad.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, right? Because you've got so many hours that you've put in already, and then that comes back to you don't love the game anymore, right? You lose the love. And when the workload exceeds, like when you love it, you'll do tons of work to keep going. When the
Right,
workload exceeds the love, I mean, I remember when I was in college, and I played at Fordham University in New York City,
right,
and this was prior to the NCAA changing the rule that you couldn't play outside during the academic year. All right, so
right,
New York City, there's incredible men's leagues. The season would end, and the next day, sometimes most of the team was playing in the men's league, and as
right.
were all the guys from Columbia and Seton Hall and Rutgers and
Yep,
all these great schools. And it's like because we just love to play, right?
right.
Just love, even though it was hard, you just love to play. And so yeah, I see kids who lose the love. Um, I see kids with, we know with electronics and social media, attention spans have gone down, and things like that. And so there's just easy way. You don't have to do hard things anymore if you don't like it. But another thing, and you have a whole chapter, I think, in your book. But so many kids now, because they're protected by their parents or they're coddled or they're told, you're the next greatest thing, they get to college and they've never dealt with adversity. And so
Correct.
talk about adversity and how important it is for kids to face adversity, so that they're ready for life.
Yes, this is one of my concerns slash complaints about many coaches. Every coach I know talks about, okay, playing football helps you deal with adversity, blah, blah, blah. No coach that I know tells the students what to do about adversity.
Mm,
And so we do. And I think it's really, really important because we're going to have adversity. I mean, that's just how it is. I'm listening to a new podcast that my son, who's a professional coach,
hmm
um, called Vision Pursue. Have you heard about
mm.
that?
No, I don't know it.
I recommend, John, that you have a look at it. It's
Hmm
it's it's for coaches. It's a podcast for coaches only, and they have meditation to it and all these other things. But one of the things they talk about to help everybody deal with stress, which I think is beautiful, is expect the expected,
Yeah.
not the unexpected.
Yeah.
For example, you know that we're going to get bad calls in a game.
Yeah.
That's expected. So
Yeah.
why do you freak out over it?
hmm
And it's really, really important. So we have one of the things we do is for the seniors, each senior gets a book. And when the weather's bad, because I learned a long time ago, you're not going to get anything done if the weather's bad. So we have the seniors make a presentation
mm
to their teammates for the book. And one of the books that we use all the time is by Keith McFarland, and it's called Bounce. The
mm
book is a book for businesses, but
hmm
as you know, the relationship between business and athletics is such that it also applies to athletics. And basically, it's a 5-step way for you, the reader, to deal with adversity. And we read it and present it to our guys every single year. It's short, it's an easy read, and the first step is embrace the bounce. Okay, we have adversity right now.
mm
Embrace it. It's
hmm
not going to go away.
hmm
And so the next question is, what do we do about it? And I don't know. In the book, I use the example of our 2011 in San Antonio National Championship Final Four, and our vans were broken into before we even got to our hotel. Our guys lost everything: clothes,
mm
backpacks, computers, everything. Adversity, John, right?
hmm hmm
And so what do we do? Well, we knew what we had to do: manage the mission, embrace the bounce. Guys, you're going to get your computers back. This was the first week in December. By Christmas, trust me,
hmm
you'll never get this weekend back. So what
hmm
can we do? And then manage the mission, manage the anxiety of the players, and all of these 6 steps that McFarland suggests in his book. And I suggest that for all of our listeners, they can take that book. There's only one that doesn't apply to athletics because it's a business book, and that is Manage the Money. So
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't, but the other 5 apply to every adversity that we have.
mm
So by the time our guys leave Ohio Wesleyan, they know what adversity is. Of course,
Yeah.
we all know what adversity is at some level, but more importantly, they know how to deal with adversity. And I can see this. Um, it's part of the maturation process of our seniors, and I can see how our seniors every year much better dealing with that last second goal that ties up the game, and so on and so forth, or that really bad red card that we got, and so on and so forth. They know how to do it. And
mm
I suggest to coaches that it's part of what we talk about all the time in
hmm
coaching. Let's figure out what you can tell your players and how you can get your players to deal with adversity.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Have you seen these last 2 weeks? There's been the Roger Federer Dartmouth commencement
Yes.
speech. Have you seen that?
Yes. Yes,
And
I have.
it's
In fact, I
wonderful,
sent it to my players, but go ahead.
right? I mean, and that's it right there. Here we have arguably, certainly a top three best all-time tennis player, and he's talking about, over the course of my career, I only won 54% of the points,
Right.
you know? So the I basically lost one for every one I won. just
Right.
edged it, and yet I'm the best ever. So really, it's about dealing with adversity. I mean, I heard Jack Nicklaus talk about this in golf,
Right.
just he's like, I lost 90% of the tournaments that I played, and I'm
Yep.
the best ever,
Right.
right? So this is such a thing, and yet so many kids are protected from anything difficult in athletics, right?
Correct.
And yet it's the perfect petri dish to learn to deal with hard things. And I think
Yes.
coaches do a disservice when they don't teach that. But I think they also have to, on the youth level, reach out to parents and be like, listen, I'm going to make it hard.
Yeah,
Your kid is going to struggle. Um, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, because at some point in their life, there's going to be adversity. And if they don't get any reps now, they're going to just crumble as an adult.
I agree. And the answer is not yelling at the players to get tougher. I mean,
Right.
that's not the answer. I mean, and our athletic history is strewn with stories like Michael Jordan, right? He got cut as a sophomore from his high school team. He will tell you, and you've probably heard this, that that is the reason he's considered one of the best players ever.
Yeah.
That he took that part, and his mother was very supportive. He took that adversity of getting cut as a sophomore, and he made himself better.
Hmm.
Instead of crawling in a hole and quitting basketball and complaining about the coach and all of those other things, he used that as motivation. And
Yeah.
I think, Bill Russell, same thing. And those guys were really successful, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite soccer stories is Abby Wambach, and she talks about making failure your fuel, and, capping moment on her career 2015 World Cup. And Jill Ellis tells her, you're no longer a starter. Right. And she said, I had 24 hours. I yelled and screamed and cried and whatever. And then I realized that this was a defining moment, how I acted in this moment. And this was also about leadership. Right. And she
Right.
said, if you can't lead from the bench, you can't lead from the field. And she had to like accept her role and say, well, what can I give to my team in this moment? But on the biggest stage, she faced adversity and made a decision that was really defined who she was, and got to lift the World Cup, the one thing that she hadn't won to that point.
Right. Exactly. I
Yeah.
know that story.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. And we've talked about this a little bit here, but I think it's a really important thing to continue exploring, is just the player empowerment and ownership and stuff like that. So you've talked about the leadership piece, but just handing it over, because especially in soccer, it's a player's game, right? They have to solve the problems, they have to make the adjustments. I'm such a huge believer in this, that it's not about the coach, it's about them. So we've talked about this. But I've said on this podcast, one of my proudest moments, I just had a group of boys that I just stopped coaching after 5 years. They were under 17s, but our first game this past year, we weren't doing great in the first half, and we were struggling with the other team's tactics or whatever. And so halftime rolls in, and my team captain just rolls over and he grabs the whiteboard and he says, "Where's the whiteboard? Give me this." And he solves the whole problem. And I
Hmm.
was like, I got nothing to say. You guys got it. Go have
Right.
fun. Right. And that was it. And I like, that was such a proud moment, that we're doing it right here, that he felt that he could do this.
Yeah.
He had the knowledge to do it and understanding. And so talk about just player empowerment, not just during the game, but just over the program as well, that the team has to belong to them.
Yes. And I think, John, that's a great example. And your reaction to that was absolutely perfect, in my opinion. But you created an environment that allowed that to happen, where other coaches don't do that.
And
And
25-year-old John O'Sullivan wouldn't have done that either.
right, no,
So,
yeah, yeah, I'm with you.
yeah.
But what we try to do to create the environment slash culture in our program is, here are some examples. The guys call me Jay and not coach. I look at it not as a hierarchical organization. I look at it as, we're in this mess together. And so that's how it is. In
Hmm.
fact, I dislike to be called coach greatly.
Hmm.
Um, I say please and thank you.
Hmm.
Please, guys, help me. Help me.
Hmm.
pick up the soccer balls.
Right.
Please, guys, help me move the goal. I was a Boy Scout, don't remember much about it, except chapter 4 in the handbook was on leadership. There were 2 pictures in the top corners of the first page of leadership, 3 Boy Scouts. One was the obvious leader. The first picture said, "Go get wood." The second picture said, "Let's go get wood." And I've
Hmm.
never forgotten that. That's the foundation of my leadership philosophy. Let's help me, guys, pick up the balls, please. When we're done, thank you. I've
Hmm.
done the laundry more than anybody else in Ohio Wesleyan history. I never use the guys' last names ever. Hey, O'Sullivan, get that ball. Never, ever,
Hmm.
ever. Because I'm trying to show them respect. I never use nicknames. I use their given name. And so the environment, and this is difficult for freshmen. It's hard. It's funny almost. Every year the freshmen just look at me like I have 2 heads, like what's going on here?
Hmm.
And but that is, in my opinion, the initial steps of creating an environment where the players feel a high level of belonging and a high level of empowerment,
Hmm.
right? And I think all those little things add up. And that's, again, that's what this book is all about. It's about all the little things that add up to making and creating an environment slash culture. And I sometimes use those words, you know, together,
Yeah.
but I think that's important. And I do this consistently.
Yeah.
Never call somebody by their last name, even if I'm having a problem with them. Never,
Hmm.
never. And the communication, as you well know, the communication part is really, really important. And
Hmm.
my door is always open. In fact, and you've probably seen this as you get older, there's an evolution in your coaching. And I talk to every player every single day in practice,
Hmm.
before practice, after practice, might not have anything to do with soccer. At a
Yeah.
place like Wesleyan, I know their professors. I know when they have tests. Hey, John, how was that econ test yesterday? Hey, John, you got a big math test coming up Thursday. Are you all set for it? What can we do to help you? Blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
So all of these little things, in my opinion, add up to a very positive, empowered kind of culture. One of the things when I talk to coaches groups, one of the things that coaches often ask is about power.
Hmm.
And they go, well, if they don't call me coach, then I'm losing power. And what I tell them, John, you may agree or disagree, is you want to get more power? Give up power.
Hmm.
That's how you get more power.
Hmm.
I have more power right now with my players than I did in my first 10 or 20 years.
Yeah.
And the guys look at me like I have, what are you talking about? And I go, try it. Just try it,
Yeah.
and you'll see.
Yeah. Well, I might even throw in a different word, like there's power and there's influence. And what do you want? You want influence, right?
Right.
And so influence comes from relationships, power comes from your position. You're the
Correct.
head coach, you're the team captain, you're the boss. That's power, but it doesn't get people to do anything, right? Maybe in the military, but
Right.
not in real life these days. But influence gets people to move. And so when
Correct.
you treat people well, when you respect them, when you empower them, now you have influence, right? And
Correct.
especially when you're, as you said, sort of the torchbearer, right? Come with me, let's pick up the balls. Come with me, let's
Right.
do this. Then people, then you're a real person, right?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
humble. You're not above picking up cones and balls. And I always say, like my college teams, you're going to need that freshman in a big moment,
Yes.
right? You can't crap on him or her all year long and then expect them to be at their best in the moment you need them the most. And you know what? That might be a penalty kick. That might be a
Right.
penalty kick that determines whether your career ends.
Yeah.
They better be
Exactly.
in the best frame of mind possible to continue your career for you.
John, I think that's a good point. I think in every modern day description of leadership, influence is the word that
Yeah.
that you will see. And every definition, influence instead of coercion and power and so on and so forth. So yes, I agree with that 100%.
Hmm. No, I love it. I mean, one other thing you talk about that I think is really important is humility. I think humility as a coach, humility as a player. So maybe just unpack, what does humility mean to you?
Well, first of all, the easy answer is giving back. And that might be one of the changes that I didn't mention early on in this discussion. Our guys have to learn how to give back, and they have to learn what it means to give back. And we have activities every single year where we give back. You know, I've taken my teams to Germany 15 times. We went this past August. We go to a small town called Baumholder,
Mm,
which is outside the largest U.S. Army base outside the United States. The
mm,
first thing we do, the first day in town, is we give a free clinic to the boys and girls of the soldiers
mm,
who are wherever they are, Afghanistan or wherever they are. Give back to these kids. We do free clinics for Delaware County, one in the spring, one in the fall. Give back. We help the women's softball team. They have those infield skins that are all dirt nowadays.
mm,
We help them in March do all the weeding and
mm,
giving back. And yes, initially the guys will look at me, why are we doing this? You know, why do we have to do this? But again, after a while, they understand what humility is and how important it is. But we have to teach it instead of just talk about it. It's to me, it's like adversity. We have to teach it. Just don't say playing soccer helps you deal with adversity. Playing soccer helps you be humble. That isn't how it works, in my
yeah.
opinion. Got to work at it.
Yeah, and this whole idea, Jerry and I talk all the time here about, coming with the attitude of what can I give versus what do I get. And I think
Correct.
kids are bombarded from a very young age, right, with I get to play my favorite position. I get to score the goals. I get to work hard when I feel like it, right? And there's sort
Right.
of this entitlement. And I always tell the kids that I coach, like, walk into that coach's office in college and be like, how do you see me giving to my team here? Right?
Right.
What can I give here versus, well, will I get to start? Will I get to do this? And I mean, great teammates are always in demand, right?
Yeah.
So, like, no one, I've never had a coach say to me, you know what, that kid's a good player, but man, he's too good of a teammate. We don't want him here.
Right.
Like, they're like, that's the exact type of person we want here. And yet youth sports these days tells kids, get your stats, get your goals, get seen, right? Get. And then they come to Wesleyan, and they have to learn to give,
Yes.
right? They have to
Exactly.
learn to fit in, to contribute. And oftentimes it's culture shock.
Yes. I have a picture in my office in one of my trips to Germany. I have a picture of Jürgen Klinsmann and Andreas Bremer
Mm.
moving goals.
Yeah.
And so when any of my freshmen say, why am I moving goals? I'll say, come on in here for a second and have a look. Here are two pretty good players. They're giving back to their teammates and to their team by moving a goal for the next activity.
Yeah.
That's what you do in life. And so it's a nice, I was, we were in Cologne and it was the national team practicing and so on and so forth. And I was lucky to get it. Pierre Litbarski was there also. And it
Hmm.
was just, and it's right in my office. So they believe me, they see it if necessary. They see it.
Right. And who are you to not move a goal if they can move a goal?
Correct.
Right. And
Basically.
that's it. And that's the All Blacks and sweeping the locker room,
Yes.
sweeping the sheds. I mean, who are you? And that's humility, right? You're
Yep.
never, I mean, you have a chapter, the little things, and you can never be too big to do all the little things it takes to be great. And that starts with having a clean locker room. It starts with all these
Yep.
things. There's a great quote, and I want listeners to hear it. And this is how you start your chapter on the little things, and it's anonymous. If you think small things don't matter, think of the last game you lost by a point.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
And certainly soccer, a lot of our games are one goal games. So to think that, oh, well, this play doesn't matter, they all matter.
They all matter. They
Yeah.
all matter.
Yeah. Jay, this is awesome. I mean, the book again, lessons from the best coach, develop a winning team culture that lasts. And the end of it, there's a lot of activities for people to use. So from your definition to people, your player evaluation metrics,
Mhm.
even positionally, motivation, things like that. So it's workbooky as well. I mean,
Yes,
for a coach, I'm assuming, you want them to take these ideas and make them your own.
correct. I do. And and John, if I could just say, I want to say I'm embarrassed about the title of the book. The book was supposed to be Lessons from the Best Coach You've Never Heard of. And somehow the
They
publisher in
changed it.
Germany said that won't sell. But I told them, if you know me at all, that's what I'm all about. And they changed it without telling me. So I'm a little bit embarrassed
You
because
you need
that's,
to you need to demand that change because it was funny when you sent me the book. I'm like, that is the most un-Jay statement I've ever heard in my life.
thank
Like,
you.
you're the most humble guy and for everything you've accomplished. So yeah, I would demand a change. You need a better agent.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have one. I got to get one. So
You
that's the problem.
you need someone to change that. But I think I mean, other than that, don't be turned off by the title because it's there's so much good stuff in there, and you know, I mean, you've got the wins to prove that you know what you're doing and that this stuff works. But by the same token, I think most of us intuitively understand why this stuff works.
Yes, I think so. I wanted it to be an easy book to read. I wanted it to be short. Coaches don't read a lot anymore. I wanted it to be conversational. I wanted to take all the academic stuff out of it, and just and one of the comments I've received is it's just like talking to you, Jay. And I that's exactly what one of my goals was to be, conversational, as I
Ah,
said.
love it. Awesome. Well, it's a great book. Where can people find the book? Where can they get it?
Amazon, obviously, Barnes and Nobles. Those are the two biggest
Mhm.
places right now. I think Amazon is probably way ahead of Barnes and Noble, but it was, this has happened to you before, but it was kind of cool. I was in a Barnes and Noble about a week ago, and I went over and there was my book. I said, "Hey, that's kind of cool," because I
Mhm.
know that's stupid, but I mean, it was nice to see it.
Yeah, no,
You know,
it's a it's a good feeling for sure to go, oh, sweet. But then if you're like me, then you kind of look around and then you take it and you turn the cover out and you walk away. So maybe someone will pick it
exactly,
up.
exactly.
Awesome. Well, Jay, if people wanted to connect with you or just follow Ohio Wesleyan, what's the best way to do that?
Well, believe it or not, let me give you my email address. This might be the kiss of death, but I do this all the time. And of course, on the Ohio Wesleyan Athletics website, ow.edu, they can find our stuff. But my email address, it's the only one I have, is JAMARTIN at OWU.edu. And I'll be happy to respond with, if they have questions, comments, and so on, I'd be happy to respond. And I did the same thing with the high school clinic I did a couple of weeks ago, and sometimes, well, in this format it's difficult to ask questions, but sometimes in a kind of a lecture hall, people don't want to ask questions, so they do it after the fact, which is absolutely fine with me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we'll put all this in the show notes for everyone, but a lot of gold here. Jay, I mean, my notes from our conversation here are just fantastic and truly appreciate you coming back on. Thanks for writing this book and thanks for just being just a great mentor and role model for all of us in the soccer world who have heard of you.
Yes.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you for asking me. I really enjoy these conversations.
Thanks, Jay. Wow, what an amazing conversation. Thank you again to Jay Martin. The book, Lessons from the Best Coach, or perhaps that title might be changing, Developing a Winning Team Culture That Lasts. Great book, super actionable. And again, a guy with 750 wins, multiple national championships, Coaches of the Year awards, and I mean, I think he just summed up everything we talk about on this podcast all the time, right? It's about relationships, it's about humility, it's about teaching people and not just assuming they got it. It's about creating an environment that people can develop in and want to be a part of, and so much more. You can connect with Jay, J.A. Martin at owu.edu. Grab the book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and everywhere else. All right. Again, in the show notes here is also our link to sign up for our coaching mastermind and certification program. We're about to get some of that info out to everyone. So put your name on that little email list there, and we'll get something out to everyone there very, very soon. Also, Patreon podcast champions, just give them all a shout out again. Thank you to all of our supporters who make a small donation to do this, and to our podcast sponsor, Sprocket Sports. Amazing, amazing people at Sprocket, amazing program, great software, great communication tool. I use it as a parent. I used it as a coach. I used it as an administrator. It's awesome stuff. So check them out, sprocketsports.com/CTG, so they know that you heard about them from Changing the Game Project and the Way Champions. All right. Last little piece here. If you are interested, we're pretty full for the fall of 24, but interested in bringing in a speaker, bringing in myself or Jerry or both to do some coach development, or I do a lot of parent education and board development and things like that, just reach out. You can email me directly, John, John, at changethegameproject.com, and we'll set up a phone call and chat about it. All right. So remember, everyone, your influence is never neutral. So go out there, change the world, make a difference. We'll see you again next week.